WMAR 2 News presents Harriet Tubman, a Maryland story.
Welcome into a special edition of WMAR 2 News. We're here at the Harriet Tubman Underground Railroad Visitor Center. I'm Skylar Henry.
And I'm Elsa M. Many of you have heard that there's a new film coming out next month about Maryland's own Harriet Tubman. But luckily for us living here in Maryland, we don't have to wait for that film to come out to see how Harriet lived.
Yeah, you can actually walk the ground that Harriet used to walk on and touch history with your own hands. Now, we're right outside of Baltimore. It's just a short drive here to the Eastern Shore, and it is beautiful out here with a lot of history waiting to be observed.
Join us as we take a tour of the Underground Railroad and the life of Harriet Tubman. We begin at the Great Wall of Tubman.
What I call our Great Wall of Tubman. These are all the images we have of Ms. Harriet Tubman, including the newer one of her in her 40s. This is the oldest image we have of Harriet. She's wearing a shawl that was given to her by the Queen of England. That shawl is located in the National Museum of African American History and Culture in D.C. What I also love about this section here is when she is standing, it is actually life-size. Tubman only stood at about 5 feet tall. So over here, when she's in the Civil War garb, she's only at 5 feet tall, and over here in her later life as well.
Harriet Tubman, as we know her, was born Araminta Ross and went by Minty. Enslaved from birth, she was only a few years old when she was put to work.
Over here, we talk about Tubman as a child, Tubman at work. This shows her checking muskrats. This is a muskrat, and this is the Little Blackwater River, and this is young Harriet Tubman checking these muskrat traps. She would have done this in late fall or early winter when their coats were the thickest because they were wanted for their coats or for their pelts. This shows her grabbing the muskrat. She's not wearing a hat, she's not wearing shoes, she's not wearing gloves. And as you can see, she's sunk completely in the mud here, which is very accurate for the Blackwater River area. The next section we discuss is the Bucktown Village store incident. Harriet Tubman was an adolescent when she went to the Bucktown Village store with the plantation cook. They went to purchase a few items for the home.
We know that there was a young boy. He comes into the store for some apparent reason we don't really know. But he ends up in the store. He's pursued by his overseer from one of the local farms. And then Minty, as she was at that age, she was about 13, comes in, and it's totally coincidental. She ends up in here just coincidentally at the same time as this skirmish is taking place between this overseer and this young boy. The boy was, he was trying to flee, and so the overseer yells to the young boy, or to Minty rather, to, hey, help, grab him, help subdue him. And she refuses and actually berates the man, lets him have it really. And it's pretty incredible because she was 13, she was, a female, she was enslaved, so you really get a glimpse, that's kind of the first time you get a glimpse of who she is and who she was to become, this very bold, strong-willed person, and it's kind of cool to see that even at 13 years old. So the little boy sees that as an opportunity to run, to flee. And so he does, he runs out the door. And that's when the overseer picked up what we think was a 2-pound counterweight, and he hurls it at the young boy. And of course, it hits Minty instead, right over the left eye. And it's a near fatal injury that really affected her for the rest of her life. The cool thing about it is really was a turning point for her though. It really was a turning point for her in her life, and it really was a blessing in disguise, if you will, because subsequently from that blow, she had a form of epilepsy where she would have sleeping spells. And she was a very spiritual woman, very religious, very, very spiritual. And she said that in some of her interviews that those dreams and visions that she received during these sleeping spells, calls from the head injury, were instrumental in her escape. That God literally told her where to go, gave her direction and guidance throughout her escapes. So, from her own words, that blow was instrumental to her. So that all happened right here.
She was a very spiritual woman. This is one of the few quotes we have here that are not directly from Harriet Tubman. It's from Thomas Garrett, and he said, "I never met with any person of any color who had more confidence in the voice of God as spoke direct to her soul, and her faith in a supreme power truly was great." Now that's an important quote because Thomas Garrett was a Quaker, a very religious man, and he believed that everybody had a spark inside them and nobody should be enslaved. He actually helped over 1,000 people emancipate themselves through his home in Wilmington on the Underground Railroad. So for a white male Quaker to talk about a formerly enslaved black woman's faith in 1868 this strongly really speaks volumes about Tubman's faith. The next section we're going to talk about is her time on the Underground Railroad and her self-emancipation. This section here talks about Tubman's self-emancipation from Poplar Neck up in Caroline County. She self-emancipated in the fall of 1849. The quote here said, "As I had reasoned this out in my mind,
that there's two things that I had a right to, liberty or death. If I could not have one, then I was going to have the other, because no man was going to take me alive."
As she was leaving, she was walking away from Poplar Neck. Her owner came home for the day. She opened the gate. She sang the goodbye song. She continued to sing the song to let her family and friends know that she was leaving, heading towards freedom. She closed the door behind him as he rode his horse through, and she walked to freedom. It wasn't uncommon to see Harriet Tubman singing. She sang frequently. After that Bucktown Village store incident, she would hear choirs singing. She would have very vivid dreams, so she would start singing and clapping herself. So it wouldn't be strange to have an enslaved person, especially Harriet, walking around and singing.
After making those first steps towards freedom and away from the Brodus farm, Minty got help from a Quaker woman.
She recounts that while she was enslaved, she met a Quaker woman, and that woman told her, it was a white Quaker woman, and that woman told her, "If you ever need help with anything, please let me know." And so the night she escaped, she actually visited her cabin where she lived, and the woman actually let her stay there and fed her and whatnot. The woman then told her how to get to the next stop. So she said, travel along this waterway, and when you get to the end of this river, there'll be a white house with green shutters. Look for that house. And so then she, after staying with this one initial woman, she travels on and she looks for the house. And she talks about how when she came to that second house, how nervous she was knocking on the door because she didn't know that person. And she was very fearful that maybe the person doesn't live here anymore, maybe this is not true, etc., etc. But the woman said, "Oh, come on in," and let her in and helped her, and then she sends her on to the next location.
When we come back, we take a look at how Harriet Tubman freed dozens of slaves after freeing herself.